Okay, so I'm in a conversation with Hector Cardenas. He wants to illustrate a tool that he invented for our client on reorder management. Why don't you give some background and then talk about what you're going to demonstrate?
Sure. A little bit of background. For this customer, they do a significant amount of drop ship fulfillment. So they're basically ordering from manufacturers and drop shipping directly to the customers. They also have inventory that they maintain, and they also ship from their inventoried items. The problem here is that NetSuite, when it does these automatic calculations of how much and when to reorder, those calculations include the drop ship sales orders. And so in that context, it makes it very difficult to just rely on that data because they want to exclude all of those purchases that they're doing for drop ship type work, right? Because it just doesn't matter, right? It's not going to be inventory. They don't need lead time. So the idea here is to maintain the information manually, right, through a system that we've created now. So we're able to update the reorder point. So just as a reminder where this data is coming from. So this is an inventory item for a record, and we have on the purchasing inventory subtab, you'll see that there's locations, right? And so NetSuite maintains the data related to a location and what it should be reordering. So in this environment, they really only inventory things. You can see there's a little bit of this retail store, but they're really trying to maintain the inventory here at their warehouse location. So they only have one location that we're interested in. So you'll see that we have a reorder point here of 15 and a preferred stock level of 27. And so these are the values that are currently in the system.
Those are native. Those are the native fields, are they not?
These are native fields to NetSuite, right?
Okay,
what NetSuite provides you. Mm-hmm.
So at this point for the location, you're just saying, okay, well, we're using the native reorder point and the native preferred stock level, but you're saying
Right.
the NetSuite's algorithms, the fact that sometimes we stock and sometimes we drop ship, it sees
Right.
those drop ships in its evaluation and it's creating a noise in terms of our interpretation because we really need to ignore those because it's not respecting that storyline. Is that one part?
Right. And so the way to get these is to use these auto calculate features here. And so now you notice that we've turned them off. We don't want NetSuite to auto calculate these amounts, right? Because it was inherently producing bad results and noise via the drop ship element. So now we're in control basically of these fields. And the idea is that, well, what should we be doing? Like, what is the appropriate amount? And the appropriate amount, for this customer is a series of trying to interpret the world, shape the world, the orders that happened in the past, purchases. How long did it take for when we submitted this purchase order? How long did it take for them to actually receive that in our inventory? So all of these elements have something to play in it and what I'm going to order and what these amounts should be. So we went through pretty long, complex discovery to understand what the data elements are. Of course, this is all available to us using queries, right? So we are shaping our summary of transactions. This is summarizing really sales orders and how they shape. And we've enhanced this query here. This is like how much sales orders do we have? And then we join this into like producing what each item should be. And we have all kinds of rules that are embedded into this. And you can see some of my notes, what rule number 1, rule number 2, rule number 3 is, and how we make this calculation. So it's almost like we're coding in here, right? We're creating queries with actual like case information to say, okay, if we've met this, if this is true, then we're applying rule 1 to it, and we're doing some kind of calculation based on that. So it's very elaborate. I mean, this took a long time for them just to understand, to kind of think through. And then we translated that into query language, right, that could produce the results that are predictable.
Okay, so can I ask you a question? Because I see these rules. First, it looks like I can see 5 rules.
Right, and these are structured in order, right? So if this is true, then rule 1 hits, right? This will not trigger. This will not fly in the way I've structured this.
Okay.
So this will go in sequence until it finds its result. So kind of rule 1, and then they spent some time like saying, okay, what would this be that I want to do rule 2, then I want to do rule 3, and I want to do some calculations. You see, all of this is basically a process by which they're determining all of this rule. So we're just we're creating their logic into these case statements and running a query then against all of this. So it's pretty complex. It took a while to get all of these details in, but once it is in, you get a nice result, which is dashboard. So this is built off of our bulk generator 2 framework. That's what this was originally built off of. We're holding all of this data here, and I would say all of this is kind of like metadata about the item, just metadata. We're holding how many sales orders we counted. And you notice here, this is where it starts getting interesting. We're also displaying, the current reorder port and the current stock level. They call those things ROP and OUL. That's their internal terminology. And you notice how I'm actually displaying the rule that we're triggering. So it just makes it convenient to say, okay, what did I really do here? Why am I showing this the result? Well, I hit this rule, right? So you can see that they have a rule. If I don't have any less than 5 sales orders, I don't want to do anything here for recommendation. So that's how I'm doing this. See, I'm doing all this effort. You could go through all this list. Some of them I'm calculating, some of them I'm triggering a rule, and so you're seeing different results based on that. Now, currently they've been using this recommendation, and then they said, you know what, we want to do something slightly different. We want a new recommendation option. So, we said, okay, let's just put that right into this thing, and you'll see how the new recommendation is slightly different. And the recommendations vary in a sense because we added like a new shape to the total quantity of items purchased in the past 4 months. Originally, what we did was we just said, okay, give me the total amount that we've purchased. And it's the sum of all purchases in the last 4 months. And then we said, well, that isn't quite right because we may have purchased a lot in 1 month, 4 months ago, and we haven't purchased anything more recent. So how much weight do I really want to give to that 1 month that we bought a lot? So they came up with strategy to say, oh, we could shape this a little bit better. Said, okay, let's start shaping them. And you can notice that I'm now creating like the shape. So anything that was within the last 30 days, I'm giving it a higher weight, then down into like 1.75 to 1 to 0.75 to 0.5. I'm now shaping the number of purchases that have been made in the past. This shape here helps me understand, maybe a little bit more refinement about this item.
Okay.
And some items may have a different shape. So
Okay.
we allow that to happen, right?
Okay, now it looks like that phenomenon is different than the rule. That looks like that's like a seasonal factor or something like that.
Yes, just trying to say, what is the shape of how I should interpret my purchases against this? How should I see this in the past so that I can get a better understanding of what I should be buying now? So each item perhaps would have a different type of shape. Right now, I give them an opportunity to reshape this by anything that they want to, right? By adding data into these custom fields. So I will take the standard shape that we've created, that we agreed on, or if they want to reshape this, they could say, hey, anything that's current within the first 30 days has more weight than you normally give, or maybe 4 months ago, it has more weight. So they're able to shape this by an item. So these values are dependent upon these. And so now we've had an opportunity to have a different value. You can see this one, right, has a different value because if you looked at linearly, it'd be 12, but now as we shaped it, we're saying it's 15. And so we're recommending something a little bit different. You can shape the data any way you want to, come up with any rule, come up with any logic, right? How do you see your past purchases? How do you see seasonality, for example, could be thought about in here. So there's all kinds of different elements that you could think about, logical elements that you could think about, that all we do is then produce the values. You could export this whole series into CSV, so you could do some analysis in Excel or something like that. You could also then say, I want to do immediate update. You could say, I want to update those 2 records and I want their new values to be this value right in there. That's what we're doing at the moment. So I would basically process that and update my inventory items at this level.
Would that generate a purchase order?
No, this doesn't generate a purchase order. It just updates these values, and then they
Ah,
can drive purchases from that.
okay,
They do
so
that as
so if
well.
I understand correctly, at the end of the day, what you're doing is you're trying to shape the reorder point and the preferred stock level, but you're trying to give you some way to see all that, shape it, and then recommit the records.
We could really filter on anything here. Our newer versions have better filtering tools, right? We use ECF for this now. Our latest version of this implementation would have much more filter capabilities, maybe filtering on text data in here and all kinds of
Sure.
things.
Sure,
So,
okay.
but for right now, it's a simple filter, right?
So what I can see is instead of exporting the data, having a bunch of, say, Excel-based algorithms, then needing to CSV and upload it back and keep munging on it, you gave them an ability to do it like a spreadsheet here, and then they talked to you about each algorithm that they wanted, and you embedded that into the queries, and thus it created a framework for you to hold these rules, and they're probably going to shape it further, but that's what somebody does in Excel anyways.
Exactly. I think about all of the different types of rules. To try to do this in Excel would be very complicated. So in query, right, I have in a case kind of situation, I can write any complicated kind of algorithm within that. So I have much more flexibility. I could read the records. I could extract the data, any data that I want to that's available to me in the environment. It just makes it a great process to think about how do I shape my demand? How do I do supply management here without all of the other necessary NetSuite tools? You could create an environment where you're doing supply planning through a tool like this.
Hector, I can really see the power of this. This is an excellent example of a couple things. First is your ability to listen carefully to the clients. Really, they're doing supply planning. It's helping them with their replenishment. And what you're doing is you're trying to give them control over the shape of things, trying to get them out of all the Excel things. And then they don't need to buy an expensive tool like DemandCast or a third-party tool if this is good enough. And this can be then distributed, meaning if there were different parties, you could easily start to partition the items based on responsibility and all these sorts of things. And then they could iterate on it. And it's a great example of your ability to think through and then use our tools to help create an experience that gets that done. It's amazing.
Yeah, I love this tool.
Thank you, Hector. This is a great example of your practice area. Really good stuff.